I've made a huge mistake.
Welcome back to Kirill Smashes Acting. I'm Kirill, actor, educator, cat enthusiast. I hope every single one of you have been enjoying using your character body and have been exploring your scripts in new ways that maybe you might not have thought of before. Over the last few months, I've been helping some of my students, current and former, audition for different schools, some at the BFA level and some at the MFA level. And during the process, I've sat in on some group auditions, and to be honest, I didn't love what I saw. Not that the students weren't talented, because they were, but I didn't love the monologue selection. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are the biggest mistakes that people make while choosing monologues for auditions? Keep in mind that this video really applies to theatrical auditions. Film auditions are usually a little bit different because they give you the sides in advance. Rarely have I ever been asked to actually do a monologue of my choosing on a film audition. Though, fun fact, the next film project I have coming up at the end of March did ask for an audition monologue, and I think that was one of the reasons I got booked. The type of audition we're going to be talking about today is more of a general audition, not necessarily for a specific show. If you have a specific show in mind, then obviously you want to find a monologue in the style of that show. But if you're auditioning for a general theater season, or if you're auditioning for schools, it's more about showing off who you are as a person and as an actor. The people watching your audition want to know that you understand yourself as an artist, and that you understand the kind of work that fits you and your type and makes the audition personal. You don't want to do Juliet because everybody's done Juliet. Well, I haven't done Juliet, but my Shakespeare piece is a female monologue. So there is that. So let's start with what I think is the biggest mistake I saw so many students make. Keep in mind though, this video is about monologue selection, not necessarily about monologue performance. Those are two different things. Now the biggest mistake I saw, and this goes especially for the younger students, so that means the students I was helping get into their BFA programs, was choosing monologues that are far too emotional. Don't get me wrong. Emotional monologues are great. My Shakespeare monologue that I use for general auditions is very emotional, but it has to be earned. Just because a piece is emotional doesn't mean that it shows you off as an actor. Younger actors especially want to choose the most emotional piece they can find because they think it shows how hard they can work. Now, while part of that is true, you also have to understand that working hard and being emotionally available are just two parts of an actor's process. So why are emotional monologues not the perfect choice? Most of the time. They're not the perfect choice because oftentimes they're very one-sided. The younger actors fall into the trap of figuring out what the emotion is, oftentimes some version of grief, and playing that mood all the way through the piece. So the piece isn't very dynamic. While it does show that you're capable of being honest and emotional on stage, it doesn't show that you understand what the story is and that you understand that acting isn't just one-sided. A lot of acting has to do with the fact that you're giving and taking with your scene partner. Even in a monologue, you might not be able to see your scene partner and they might not be there, but you should be talking to a scene partner in your mind, not just the words or the feeling or the mood. So many of these young actors seem to get trapped in the mood of a piece instead of telling the story of the piece. So let's talk about some other things to avoid when choosing monologues. You know those monologues that you see all the time, the "when I was young," or "I had a dream," or any kind of story. Generally, you want to avoid those. Those monologues become very reflective. But you have to understand that oftentimes those monologues are part of a much longer story. And they fit into a play or a movie or a scene very well, but they aren't great for an audition because you don't have time to create that character. You don't have time to get the people watching you and the people judging you to understand why that story is important. They might not know the play you're coming from, or they might not know the film you're coming from, so they might not understand what it is your character wants. And if you haven't made it clear what your character wants as early as possible in your audition, well, you might get forgotten. Because the fact is, especially if you're applying for BFA or MFA programs, they might see 100, 200, 500, or 1,000 people. So if they don't understand your piece and what it is you're trying to get within the first 10, 15 seconds, their brains are going to move on. And no matter how well you stick the landing, you've already lost them. And you've probably lost the audition or the spot in the program. Another trap I've seen is monologues without a very clear objective. If the objective of the monologue isn't clear from the words, well then you're really fighting an uphill battle. And since you only have a minute, you want everything to be as clear as possible. Remember when I said that overly emotional monologues are a trap because actors will fall into just playing the mood? If you use an overly vague monologue, the same thing might happen. Or even worse, the people watching you don't understand what you want from the person you're talking to. And that's what we want to avoid at all costs. Another trap I saw people fall into was using monologues that had a lot of exposition. Way too many words before they actually got to what their objective is or what the point of the piece is. That's a trap. You don't have a lot of time in an audition, so you want to make sure that you're going after something right away. And the people watching your audition should know or feel what your objective is from the moment you start speaking. You should be completely engaged and reacting to your scene partner, going after your objective from your moment before. That way, no lines are wasted and they're always active. If you can get the auditioners to pay attention from the very first line, you have a much higher probability of succeeding and getting into the program or into the season that you want. It's huge. No lines should be wasted. When you go into an audition, you're not there to experiment. You're not there to see how far you can push yourself. Most of the time, there are exceptions. You are there to show them who you are as an actor. When you pick your own monologues, it's very personal. Just the monologue choices that you make show them what kind of stories you're attracted to, what kind of characters you're attracted to, what you see your type as, and where you see yourself as an actor at that moment. You want to pick monologues that you know you can do well. You want to knock them out of the park from the moment you start speaking, and then you want to leave them wanting more. There's one last thing before I go that I want to make sure you guys know. Do not, under any circumstances, ever, choose a monologue from a monologue book. There's just not enough meat in it. Choose something from a published play or from a film. A play, if it's a theatrical monologue, meaning you're going in for a theatrical season or for a college program, and a film, if you've been asked for a film monologue by a film project. Sometimes they're not as specific. The reason for this is actually pretty simple. By the time a play gets published, it's been shown over and over and over, and it's been workshopped a ton. That means that the writer created the play. They had many drafts that they cut down to make it as concise as possible to tell their story. Then, once they think it's ready, they do readings, workshops, and they get edits from the actors, from directors, from other writers, from their agents. So by the time you get a published play, it's gone through so many revisions that the fat is usually just cut off and every line can be active. If you go from a monologue book, they usually don't go through as rigorous a process. Yes, they have edits. Yes, they trim the fat as much as possible, but not nearly as much as if you have workshop after workshop with professionals involved. So don't set yourself back by taking the easy way out. Trust me, the harder way will get you better results. So I hope you enjoyed that video and learned what mistakes not to make for your next audition. In the next video, we'll start talking about what are the things to look for when choosing the perfect monologue. I don't know if you guys remember, but this is my cat Poofy Butt. Poofy Butt was actually the first kitten I ever rescued and my only foster fail, and I love him. Say goodbye, Poofy Butt. Goodbye, Poofy Butt.